when you get older, it takes longer to prepare for everything. You know, it's strange. All right. It's always a pleasure to be in Spain and to be in Catalonia and to be in Barcelona. We're going to talk about this shift to a third industrial revolution, and then at the end, we're going to talk about a very stimulating think tank we had yesterday and some suggestions of specific roads we need to travel to meet the challenges and obligations and opportunities that the Deputy Mayor just pointed out for us. I'm going to start on a somber note. I hope it'll be a liberating reflection. We are in the midst of a profound global economic crisis. This is not cyclical, this is epochal. The second industrial revolution is dying. We can smell it. It's dying all over the world. Fossil fuel energies, the heart of the second industrial revolution, are becoming more expensive. The price on world markets more volatile. The technologies based on these energies, like the internal combustion engine, centralized electrification, are old. They're antiquated. There's no multiplier effect left here. The whole infrastructure of this civilization is made out of carbon, and it's much more expensive to repair and mend. This system is on life support in every continent in the world. And now this crisis is compounded by real-time climate change. First industrial revolution, 19th century. Second industrial revolution, 20th century. We spewed so much carbon dioxide and methane and nitrous oxide into the atmosphere to make these revolutions. We're now in real-time climate change. It's no longer academic. I don't have to tell you here. We are seeing a real impact on agriculture and infrastructure around the world. And now we're seeing that our scientific models have underestimated the speed of the feedback loops, and our species is in trouble. We are in the midst of the sixth great extinction event of the last 450 million years on all the science models. We've had 5 wipeouts. Every time there was a wipeout, it took about 10 million years for this planet to recover that biodiversity. We are in the sixth extinction event. And we could lose up to 70% of the species on this earth by the end of this century. So what do? We're in 4-year cycles of growth collapse, and we're in an end game for the second industrial revolution over the next 25 years. We've got lots of young people unemployed. We got an economy that tries to grow and then stalls out. And now we've got real-time climate change. Let me share an anecdote. Sir, can you just make that the last photo? I'm used to a classroom. Just go in the back, enjoy, sit, relax. You're off. You don't have to work anymore. Just because the camera bothers me. If you could just go in the back. Thank you. Let me share an anecdote. When Chancellor Merkel became Chancellor of Germany, she asked me to come to Berlin in the first couple of weeks of her new government to help her address the question, how do we grow the German economy in the 21st century? When I got to Berlin, the first question I asked the Chancellor is, Madam Chancellor, how do you grow the German economy or the European economy or the global economy in the end game of a great industrial era built on energies that are now dying? This is the issue confronting every continent, every country, every region in the world. Nobody is removed from this crisis. So, what do? We need a new economic vision for the world, as the Deputy Mayor said, and it's got to be compelling. We need a new economic game plan for that vision. It's got to be deliverable. And the game plan has to move as quick or more quickly in the emerging nations, not just the industrialized countries. We have to be off carbon in 30 years. I didn't say low carbon, off. So we need to step back and ask the question, how do the great economic revolutions in history occur? Because that's going to give us a roadmap of what we need to do here, the front line, the pioneers, the folks in this room, what we need to do here to get through the door to the next stage of human history. The great economic revolutions in history occur when 2 phenomena merge: new energy revolutions and communication revolutions to manage them. All through history, new energy regimes make possible more complex civilizations. The complexity requires new communication revolutions agile enough to manage the flow of the new energies across time and space. When communication and energy revolutions merge, they change the economic paradigm, they change consciousness, they change society fundamentally. Let me give you an example. 19th century, first industrial revolution, a convergence of communication and energy. We went from manual print presses to steam-powered printing. This was a big deal because we could now mass produce volumes of cheap print material with very low transaction costs, as important as the internet today. Then we introduced public schools. We created a print-literate workforce with the communication skills to manage a very complex coal-powered, steam-driven, rail-run industrial revolution. An illiterate workforce would not have had the communication skills to manage the 19th century industrial revolution. 20th century, a second convergence of communication energy, a second industrial revolution, centralized electricity, and especially the telephone, and later radio and television became the communication media to manage a complex and dispersed auto and oil era, a suburban society, and a mass consumer culture. And now that second industrial revolution is on life support. It's not coming back. Despite all of the assurances we have from the U.S. that we're going to go to shale gas and tar sands, that's the 20th century. We are right now in Europe, just now on the cusp of a new convergence of communication energy, a third industrial revolution. I don't know if we'll get there in time. I hope we do. We've had a very powerful communication revolution in the last 25 years. Personal computer, the internet. Now, what's so interesting about this technology? I'm pretty sure I'm the oldest person in this room. I grew up on centralized, top-down, one-to-many communications. What's interesting about the internet is it's organized completely differently. As a communication medium, it's organized to be distributed, collaborative, and it scales laterally, peer-to-peer. And now 2.3 billion people, this amazes me, we did this in 25 years. 2.3 billion people have a little cell phone and desktop computer, and with almost zero marginal cost, they can send their own audio, video, and text, distributed, collaborative, and peer-to-peer laterally scaled with far more power than all the centralized TV networks in the world, and we did this in 20 years. Tell me if we get the story, we can move on the narrative quickly. This communication revolution is only half of the story. So this internet communication revolution, which is distributed, collaborative, and laterally scaled, is just now beginning to merge in Europe, and especially Germany, with a new energy regime, distributed energies, that actually have to be organized collaboratively and scale laterally. It's a perfect fit of communication energy. What are distributed energies? Let me compare them to elite energies. Coal, oil, gas, uranium, shale gas, they're elite because they're just not found in your backyard when you go home after this conference. They're found in a few places. So they require huge military and geopolitical investments and massive capital to finance their conversion from the wellhead to the end user. Be clear that the first and second industrial revolution energies are the most centralized, top-down energies we've ever committed to in human history, and they're now dying. What are distributed energies? Those are energies in your backyard when you go home. The sun shines all over this beautiful little oasis in the universe every day, so far. The wind blows across the planet 24 hours a day, source of energy. In the rural areas, we have forestry and agricultural waste, can be converted to energy overnight. And the coastal regions, our urban populations have the ocean tides and waves coming in every day, very predictable. Wherever we have garbage, we can anaerobically convert it back to energy overnight. Underneath the ground, we have a hot geothermal core of heat, and in the ocean floor, that can provide our species, along with these other energies, till kingdom comes. We have enough of these distributed energies in every square inch of the biosphere in some frequency or proportion to provide our species. The European Union has made a formal commitment to a 5-pillar infrastructure for a third industrial revolution. I was privileged to develop this plan with the EU. It has formally been endorsed by the Parliament in 2007. It's working its way through the European Commission. Next week, we will put out an industrialization initiative for Europe. the heart and soul of the third industrial revolution. And let me say, Germany is absolutely leading in all 5 pillars, but not for long. Pillar 1, the EU is committed to 20% renewable energy by 2020. That's not a suggestion, that's a mandate. Every region has to get to that goal. That's a third of the electricity has to be green. This leads us to pillar 2. How do we collect energies which are distributed? Now, our first thought a number of years ago was, let's go to Spain, Greece, and Italy, where there's a lot of sun, put in some big solar parks, and then a high voltage line. We're going to ship it all to Europe. And then we'll go and get the wind off the shore of Ireland, and we'll put in big wind parks and ship it, and the Norwegians will give us their hydro. Now, let me say, none of us oppose these more concentrated uses of what are essentially distributed energies. They're essential. They're not sufficient. They're low-lying fruits. They're easy. We want them. But what we're learning is we cannot actually manage a robust and sustainable continental economy just with centralized uses of distributed energies. They're just a small part of the mix. So we began to ask the question, if distributed energies are everywhere, how do we collect them? Everywhere we have infrastructure. So buildings, buildings, buildings. Buildings use the most energy. They create the most CO2. Parenthetically, I always need to mention this, the number 2 cause of industrial-induced climate change is beef production and consumption and animal husbandry. Number 3 is transport. No one seems to want to make any statements about number 2. How serious are we here? Number 1, buildings. We've got 191 million buildings in the European Union. Homes, offices, factories. The goal is to convert every single existing building on this continent in the next 40 years to your own personal green micro power plant. You can get solar off the roof, wind off the sidewalls, geothermal heat energy underneath the building, garbage converted energy inside the building, the works. The new buildings, positive power. Bouygues, the French construction company, has the first positive power building up. It's so sophisticated, it sucks up enough sun for all of its needs, sends back power to the grid, and their ROI is only 5 years, and they haven't even scaled. And actually, in the last 6 months, a university contest was done around the world, and 25 universities have come up with positive power buildings. The students. How hard is this?